Karibu Sana Club 1999. More often than not, the word history bores very many people. And yet history can very easily solve mysteries. Indeed, very huge mysteries. We will briefly go back to history to be able to solve the mystery of why the Americans named Amos Wako as the first person to be on a travel ban in aiding the fight against corruption in Kenya. And I need to emphasize, the point is not whether Wako is guilty or not. The point is that this is an individual from the past. And it should be obvious, anybody who is serious about fighting corruption should start with the now. What is happening currently, the dam scandal, etc., etc. In 2009, I got inside information that the Americans were about to ban a very prominent Kenyan from traveling to the United States. Today, 10 years later, I still believe 100% that information was credible. And I published the information in the Kumekucha blog. That individual was a man called William Samoei Ruto, who was then the agriculture minister. About a week later, the Americans, under intense pressure to name the individual, whom they had said very clearly was a senior member of the Mwai Kibaki administration, because he was president then, ended up naming Joshua Kule, who had been a long-serving aide to former President Daniel Arap Moi. Now, to many Kenyans, Americans remain angels. They can't do any wrong. And so nobody pressed the Americans to explain why their early information did not make any sense. Because Bwana Kule was never a senior member of the Kibaki administration. Indeed, he came nowhere near the Kibaki administration during the entire 10 years Kibaki ruled Kenya. The obvious explanation is that the name was switched at the last minute. Now hold on to that thought, and let's fast forward to late 2012. In late 2012, it appeared to any casual observer that the political career of one William Samoei Ruto was over. He was facing very serious charges at the International Criminal Courts at The Hague. But what many of us did not know is that Bwana Ruto at the time was playing some cards behind the scenes, very serious cards. And due to this maneuvering, which was in fact very serious, clever, smart maneuvering, because it involved outwitting the deep state. At the end of it all, a very unlikely ticket for the presidency emerged. One of Uhuru Kenyatta as president and William Samoei Ruto as deputy president. It was a very unlikely union because the country had just emerged from the worst tribal clashes in 2007. And the two major tribes involved in that were the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu. Ruto is a Kalenjin and President Uhuru Kenyatta is a Kikuyu. The reaction of American diplomats was predictable. They told Kenyan voters in very clear English that if the two were ever elected, the US would have nothing to do with Kenya. And so would most of the Western world. Now we know how that story ended. This unlikely ticket ended up winning the presidency in March 2013. And what the very senior American diplomats had predicted never came to pass. America did not cut diplomatic ties with Kenya. So the question is, what changed? Well, there's a very important clue in the fact that William Samoei Ruto made very frequent visits at around that time to neighboring Uganda. Now, the president of Uganda is a man called Kaguta Yoweri Museveni. Despite gross human rights abuses, Yoweri Museveni remains America's blue-eyed boy in East Africa. The reason? America's national security purposes. National security, American national security, supersedes everything, including human rights of miserable East Africans. And so even if you didn't have any inside information and you simply joined the dots, you would know that the way the Ruto-Uhuru ticket happened is that Ruto used Museveni to cut a deal with the Americans in the interests of their national security. And so, going back to 2009, we can guess why names were switched at the last minute to protect William Samoei Ruto from being banned from traveling to the United States. Now, if indeed a deal was cut in 2012 for the interests of the Americans that allowed a Uhuru Ruto presidency, which by extension would mean a Ruto presidency after 2022, then it makes sense that the Americans would not back the Building Bridges initiative, or they would not back anything that would stop a DP Ruto presidency in 2022, because that would be against American national interests. Indeed, the only way we would be able to know immediately that American national interests have changed is if DP William Ruto was banned from traveling to the United States. But that has not happened, and it's highly unlikely that that will ever happen. Now, when you have all that information, it suddenly makes a lot of sense why the Americans would name a prominent member of the BBI at the top of their list of travel bans in their aid to fight corruption in Kenya. In diplomatic circles in Kenya, it is well known that despite paying lip service to the BBI, the Americans are against the Building Bridges initiative. They're not for it. And so, what better way would there be to hit out, to fight the BBI behind the scenes, than to name one Amos Wako? At a time when the minds and hearts of Kenyans are mainly focused at Team Tanga Tanga when it comes to corruption. To confirm the authenticity of today's sensitive video, look out for clues that the Americans are actually fighting the BBI. And don't look for those clues from official statements. Because actions always speak much louder than carefully worded press statements. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.